Okay, for this set of notes, we're going to be graphing linear equations. Up until now, you've been writing linear equations. Now you're going to graph some. So we're on page 411 of the notebook, and if you notice, they give you some steps. So when you go to graph it, you want it in slope-intercept form so you can pull the slope and the y-intercept from the equation. You want to be able to get that m and that b, right? So you need to make sure it's in that form. Next thing you're going to do is you are going to graph the y-intercept, and notice it's 0b. So you're going to take this b value and you're going to graph that 0b. Then you're going to use the slope from that point to create the next point. So you want to have a fraction for your slope, right? Your slope is even if it's not a fraction, you're going to turn it into a fraction. And then you're going to use a ruler to draw the line. And you want to have arrows on both ends. So let's look at the first one. So what you're going to do is you are going to find your slope and you are going to find your y-intercept. So if I look at this equation, it is already in slope-intercept form. My slope is -1, but remember I want to turn it into a fraction, and my y-intercept for this is 5. So that means that my y-intercept is 0, 5, that point. Remember, you're writing this down. So I'm going to go back to my notes. It's these two steps that are really, really important, step 2 and step 3. You're going to graph your y-intercept first. So this is going to go on there first. So 0, 5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. So there's your y-intercept. I just graphed that. Now I'm going to use my slope. And if you look, slope is usually, and I'm going to write this over here, slope is usually rise over run. So that means that you're going to go up and you're going to go to the right. But if it's negative, if you've got a negative slope, this is going to be a drop over a run. So you're going to drop and you're going to go to the right. So keep that in mind, positive, negative slope. This slope that I'm working on in this question is negative. So I am going to drop 1 because it's negative, and I'm going to run 1. I'm going to go to the right, and there's my next point. And you can do this a few times to make sure that when you go to actually draw your line, you're setting up a ruler on a good set of points. So those are a bunch of points that I drew for this line. My next step is I have to connect everything. So it says here, arrow on both ends, right? It's a line, it goes on forever and ever. So when you go to draw this line, this is not going to be what we're expecting to see. We are going to be expecting to see an arrow on each end. So you should really drag it past the edges of the graph, and there is the line, the linear equation for y equals -x plus 5. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Let's look at our m. It's -3, but I'm going to turn it into a fraction because I need a rise and a run, or a drop or a run. And then my b is -1. So that means my y-intercept is 0, -1. That's where it crosses the y-axis. So that's my first point I'm going to draw, 0, -1. And then from this point, and that's what's really important, it's not from the origin, it's from this point, I am going to use my slope to get my next point. And because it's negative, right, this is negative, I'm going to drop 3 and run 1. There's my next point. I'd like to draw another point, and I can kind of do that, but it's not, on there. And then if I want to draw a point above, I just kind of go in the opposite direction. So instead of dropping 3, I rise 3. Instead of running 1, I go backwards 1, and there's another point for me. So that's a way to get a point on your line that is above where you started. So there's some points. I'm going to draw my line. Again, I am going to draw it through all the points. And I'm going to put arrows on each end. There's my line for y equals -3x minus 1. Okay, next one, m equals 2/5. B equals 2. So my slope's already a fraction. So my y-intercept is 0, 2. That's where I'm going to start, right there. And then I'm going to take my slope and I'm going to rise 2 because it's positive, and I'm going to run 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're always going to run to the right. And I want to do another point, so this means I have to kind of retrace my steps backwards. So instead of rising 2, I'm going to drop 2. Instead of running 5, I'm going to go backwards 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's another point for me. So now I can draw my line through these 3 points. And there you go. Okay, we'll do a few more together. So this one, my M is -1 over 4. My B is 3. So my y-intercept is 0, 3. I'm going to plot that first point. Then I'm going to use that slope. I'm going to drop 1 because it's negative, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. I want to draw another point, so I'm going to do that opposite. I'm going to rise 1 and go backwards 4 to get an extra point. And now I can draw my line, which isn't beautiful because I don't have a ruler, but you'll have a ruler, so yours will look better than mine. Okay, number 5, M is 2, but I want a fraction, so I'm going to write 2 over 1. B is 6, so that's going to be 0, 6 where it crosses. So first step, graph that B, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm going to go to draw my next point, and if I try to go up 2 and over 1, it's kind of awkward to do that because I don't have any graph. So I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to go drop 2 and run backwards 1. And there's my point. Drop 2, go backwards 1, right? And I can draw a bunch of points that way. So now I can draw my line. And notice this was a positive slope, so it's going in the up direction from left to right. So if you're ever having trouble when you're trying to do the backwards points, you can double check at the end that your line is positive. Okay, last one. On this row, I have M equal to -3 over 2. I have B equal to -5. And that's going to be a 0, -5 y-intercept. So I'm going to graph that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is right there. And then from that point, I want to do drop 3, run 2, because it's a minus. When I try to drop 3, I'm like not even where I want to be. So that means I have to kind of go backwards. So to dropping 3, I'm going to go up 3. I'm going to rise 3, 1, 2, 3. And instead of running 2, I'm going to go backwards 2. And then there's my next point. So up 3, backwards 2. There's my line. Notice it has a negative slope like it's supposed to. So 5 and 6 are a little tricky because you had to kind of work backwards with your slope, but it's the same process. 7, let's just take a quick peek at this one because this one's a little confusing because M is equal to -4 and I want to make it a fraction. What's B equal to? There's no B. So what does that mean when there's nothing? B is 0, okay? And when you look at number 8, so you can graph that after you finish watching this. When you look at number 8, there's something going on with number 8 that's a little tricky. They don't quite have it in slope-intercept form, right? It should be y equals 5x minus 3, okay? So be careful with that. Y is by itself, which is great, but you have to be careful about your M and your B. So for this one here, it's really y equals minus 6 over 5x plus 1, okay? So that is something to consider when you're graphing these.